Rob Rosenthal with American Friends of Magen David Adom. Joining us here today is Kathy Reed, also with American Friends, Ori Shacham, who is Chief of Staff of MDA, Dr. Refael Strugo, who is the Medical Director of Magen David Adom in Israel, and who is right now one of the key people in dealing with this pandemic. And Ido Rosenblatt, who is a medevac paramedic and also Magen David Adom's Chief Information Officer, and the person in that role who oversees MDA's technology. And from Jerusalem, we have Yoni Yagodovsky, who is Director of International Relations for Magen David Adom, and coming off the last day of a 14-day mandatory isolation after traveling to the US. So Israel is clearly taking protecting other Israelis very seriously. So you're all in different places. Yoni is in Jerusalem. Ido and Refael Strugo are currently in Kiryat Ono at the National Operations Center. Ori is in Tel Aviv at what will soon be the Israel's first drive-in testing center, and we'll talk about that more. And I guess I will throw the first question to Ori, who's been on the ground and been all over the place. How are you guys with the amount of duties and responsibilities you have? How are you guys holding up?
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We understand that it is very difficult times for everybody, and we really appreciate the time that you're taking the time and joining us. And thank you for your support and your partnership. The last three and a half weeks have been very busy for Magen David Adom. Actually, the Minister of Health approached Magen David Adom and asked the organization to be the focal point for the civilians in everything that relates to the coronavirus. Ido will speak about this later, but this made us enlarge our capacity, I think, 13 times more than we are used to. And everybody in Magen David Adom are totally dedicated for this job. Basically, all the headquarters people have become call takers. All the people that have medical that are medical professionals are answering professional questions to coronaviruses. And we believe that thanks to our experience and thanks to the large numbers of volunteers that we have, we are still giving a very good service to the people of Israel.
So you mentioned the 82,000 calls, the 13-fold increase in calls you've had. How have you been able to sort of deal with that onslaught of calls? And can you talk a little bit about how you were able to expand the already robust call-taking capacity that you had?
Well, Rob, basically, it's the basis is technology, and Ido will expand about this later. Magen David Adom dispatch has the capacity of responding for more than 100,000 emergency calls a day. Up until now, we had around 6,000 on average, but with the corona issue, people are getting more and more concerned about this issue. So we see a large increase, and you mentioned the large numbers. What we did, we opened additional dispatches. We basically added around, Ido will know the exact numbers, but we reached more than 350 answering points throughout Israel. And when you have this amount of volunteers that can provide professional answers to the callers, and when you have the capacity to extend your services 3 times more or 4 times more than usual, this makes us able to respond in a very short time. It's something like 10 seconds. People get an answer, whether it's an emergency or whether it's a corona-related inquiry. Nevertheless, it makes them more calm.
Right. And how are you able to separate sort of the calls specifically related to the coronavirus versus the day-to-day calls for heart attacks, car accidents, women giving birth that don't just necessarily stop during this crisis?
this is a big challenge.
Maybe I will answer.
Yes, Ido, please.
Hello, everybody. I'll take here a little bit from Uri. So again, thank you all for joining us. I'll talk a little bit about the model that we built with the Ministry of Health since Rabbi Letzman actually ordered us to take over this endeavor. The model that we built is actually dependent on the 101 number. As we know it, every citizen in Israel knows whenever he has any kind of a medical problem, he would dial 101. So we decided we would not change that even for the corona patients, meaning the same number for all medical problems. This is the beginning. Then we built for our 101 dispatchers, we built a short triage made out of four or five short questions that actually within 15 to 20 seconds, they decide whether the patient is related to the corona problem or he has, as you said, a heart attack, a stroke, a car accident, whatever. If he is what we call a corona-related patient, then the call is delivered to a special dispatch center with special dispatchers that we train them to ask specific questions regarding corona problem. And with that dispatch center, we have even doctors who are giving answers to certain questions from the public. This is dealt with a different center, a different dispatch center that doesn't interfere with the day-to-day EMS service of the regular 101. So we actually built a two-phase dispatch calling and answering for the public.
Okay. Thank you. We have, if somebody could just turn down their volume, we're getting a little bit of feedback. There seems to be, because we are acutely aware here at AFMDA, sort of the procedures you are utilizing there seems to be a much greater sense of clarity as to what Israelis are supposed to do if they're symptomatic versus sort of the messages we're getting here in the United States where sometimes getting conflicting information. Do you think that as a national organization that Magen David Adom has had sort of an advantage in a crisis like this, where it's a national crisis and even one that transcends your borders? Do you think the fact that you're a national organization and can sort of tackle this in a unified manner has been very advantageous to you?
Absolutely. I believe during all kinds of crises, but especially a crisis which is like the corona crisis, it's a cross-country crisis. It's a big advantage when you have one EMS system that works together all over the country, same protocols, same dispatch protocols, same treatment protocols, same paramedics, same training. We all speak the same language. So we can give all the people the same answers, the same treatment. And this is a big advantage in Israel. And I know, and I've seen many EMS systems who are what we call municipal systems or city systems and so on, very difficult to handle a country crisis when you have several municipal systems. And this is the big advantage of MDA because it's a national system.
Right. I'd also like to talk about the initial testing. One of the things that, from our perception, that Magen David Adom did exceptionally well is to avoid infecting others, is sort of keeping people at home and doing the initial testing at home. So I would love for you to touch on the telemedicine program, the community medicine program, and sort of how you're rolling that out, and what is the equipment that you'll be using for that.
I think you already know that we are trying in the past, I think 3 to 5 years, to push on into a new EMS model, because up to now, in our EMS model, as most of the EMS that I've seen in the United States and other what we call Anglo-American models, whenever you have a medical problem, you dial either 911 or 101 or 112 or whatever. A paramedic or a medic would come to your house, would treat you under certain protocol, and would take you to the hospital, to the ER. And we've seen in the past years, at least in the past 10 years, that a lot of these medical problems can be and should be treated in the community. There's actually no reason to take at least 30 to 40% of the patients. There is no reason to take them to the ERs. You can treat them at home. You can treat them in the community. And we've been trying to push this model into the medical system in Israel as a new EMS model, a new perception of how you should treat acute medical problems. And up to now, although professionally, everybody who saw this model actually loved it because it's really a great model, we entangle difficulties in actually getting through with this model, mostly regulatory problems and financial problems from the Ministry of Health, from the medical insurance, and so on. On this crisis, on this corona crisis, is actually, it shows the importance of a model using telemedicine and treating patients with minor acute problems at home, because as we see today, and we believe within the next 3 to 4 weeks, it's going to get worse. We have tens of thousands, and I believe the number would grow into 500,000 or more Israelis who are at home, isolated. They cannot get out. They don't want to get out. They don't want to go to the hospitals. They don't want to go to the clinics, but they do need medical treatments for acute minor problems. And the only way you can give them this treatment is by using the EMS, the national EMS, MDA, with the community model. When you have a paramedic going into the patient's home with the equipment and the medical, the first aid medical, and the treatment is giving online under a supervision of a doctor who is sitting maybe 100 kilometers away. On this way, and this model, actually every patient receives a medical treatment from a doctor with a paramedic on his side without the patient leaving his home.
Dr. Strugo, you talked about it potentially getting that there'd be more people infected. So China now thinks it's perhaps reached the apex of its curve in terms of number of people infected. Maybe they're being overly optimistic, but they've started to reopen in factories in Hubei province, which was the most seriously affected there. Do you have a sense of where Israel might be on its infection curve?
I think we are. If you look at the numbers for the past week, you see that the curve is rising up. We began 2 weeks ago, we were around 20 to 30 patients. Now we passed the 300 patients yesterday. The curve is rising up, and I do believe as we'll do more tests, we'll find more patients. Because the numbers in the population, if you look at the South Korean population, the numbers are around 3%, 3 to 5% from the population tested. So I believe if we will rise, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, from 1,000 tests that we do today to around 10,000 tests per day with the 6 drive-through stations that we're going to dispatch all over the country. So if we'll test 10,000 people a day, we will find between 200 to 300 patients every day, new patients. And this is going to be, I do believe, for at least the next 2 weeks or so.
Right. So you actually gave me the perfect lead-in to passing to Ori to sort of talk about the new testing. So my understanding is that here previously we've always been testing by going to people's homes and doing throat and nasal swabs in their homes. That beginning, is it tomorrow, we think? We're going to start, right? Magen David Adom will start doing the testing from these drive-in centers. And Ori, you're at the one that hopefully will open tomorrow. Can you talk a bit about the model there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Well, indeed, as Dr. Strugo explained, up until now, we've been doing around 1,000 tests per day, using around 100 to 120 specially trained paramedic. Although this was a very useful mechanism at the beginning of the corona outbreak, when the numbers grow, as Dr. Strugo explains, we understand that in order to enlarge the number of tests, there is no other way than to have mass tests. And
We seem to have lost Ori's feed.
open up a drive-in, drive-through, or actually, although nobody in Israel can say drive-through, so we are using the drive-in name, a drive-in compound where people arrive directly from their houses. Those are people that are in isolation at their houses. They'll be required to go from their houses to their cars, drive straight through to this compound and be tested. Now, in order to make sure that we are testing only the people that needs to be tested, Magen David Adom technical team led by Ido has developed a system that connects the current registry that we have of the corona patients that are suffering from symptoms, and basically creates a barcode for the user. That means that once the test is approved by a doctor, which is the requirement of the Ministry of Health, the patient receives a text message saying to schedule a test or an appointment in the special compound. Go to this link, fill out the forms, choose which time is best for you, and at the end you'll get a barcode. What we are doing in this compound, or what we are planning to do in this compound, and now I'm going to change my camera so all our viewers can see where we are at. We are actually now in a tent that is going to channel the people that come with their cars to the testing tent. So basically, as you can see, only one car can go each time. People are not supposed to go out of their cars, so we actually maintain or keep them in isolation. And when they arrive to this point, this is the identification point. There is a camera over here which reads the barcode from their cellular phone, identifies them, and actually creates a patient registry for them. Then the patient will continue drive like additional 5 to 10 meters. On this point, we'll have a paramedic standing with a special suit. The paramedic will go out from the left of the screen, will go to the window of the patient's car, and will test him for corona. Now, we are not using only one tunnel. We are using 6 tunnels. You can see the entire tent is ready to receive patients. All these people inside are from the Israeli media that came tonight to show the people of Israel what Magen David Adom is planning. And then once the test is over, the people will go with their car outside and drive back to their house. Now, when we have 6 of these channels in one tent, we believe that an average time for a patient to be in this compound is about 10 minutes, something that will lead us to a number of around 1,500 tests per day. We are going to have 6 of these compounds, drive-in compounds, throughout Israel, one in the south in Beersheba, one in the north in Haifa, one in Jerusalem, and 3 in the center of Israel. The first one you have seen just now. That means that we can reach up to 10,000 tests per day, which will cover most of, or let's say most of the needed people on the current situation. Dr. Strugo, if you can add something a little bit more about the next phase of testing of people that are currently not tested but may be tested later.
So the Ministry of Health, when we started this treatment of the corona crisis, at the beginning, the decision, and when I say the decision, it is not MDA's decision, it's the decision of the Ministry of Health, the public services. They decided at the beginning to test only patients who had clear-cut what we call epidemiologist circle and the clinical circle. Let's say if you came from China within the past 14 days and you had either fever or cough, so this would be the only way that you could be checked for the suspicion of having the coronavirus. As we moved through the days and we had more and more patients and we saw more and more countries around the world, they actually widened what we call the epidemiological circle. At the beginning, it became if you came from other countries beside China, and since last week, if you came from abroad, from any country. In the past week, we started actually to move to a new phase in the disease when we understand that we probably have more and more patients in the Israeli community, meaning that you don't really have to come from abroad to bring the disease. We probably have enough coronavirus patients within Israel, and we are moving to the phase when we actually pass the disease from one patient to another. So in the past 2 days, there have been talks in the Ministry of Health, and I do believe they will change it beginning from tomorrow. Doesn't matter anymore what is your epidemiological circle. You don't have to be near a patient, or you don't have to come from certain states abroad. It's enough if you have the clinical signs, meaning fever and cough, you will be tested for coronavirus. And by stopping to use the epidemiological circle, we believe that we will have at least 10,000 Israelis per day that will be tested for the coronavirus. And this will give us the true picture of how much the disease had spread in the community.
So at this point, you cannot sort of project what % of the people currently infected are, received community infections versus contracted the disease abroad.
No, but we could do an estimation because we know we did up to now in Israel, we did around 10,000 tests. Most of them actually were done by MDA. Around 8,000 of them were done by MDA. Another 2,000 were done by hospitals. But from those 10,000 tests, we have 300 patients, more or less, that were tested positive, meaning that at the symptomatic population, the number is around 3%. And if you look at the world, if you look at South Korea, it's more or less the same numbers. They have something around 4% of the population tested. So we believe if you take today the symptomatic population in Israel, there are maybe, I don't know, something like 500,000 or 1,000,000, measure 3% of them, I do believe we will reach around 30,000 patients in Israel or so. But most of them are with very, very light symptoms. More than 90% of the patients, they have cough, minor fever, nothing more.
Right. There was one patient who subsequently died, but it was later attributed to a heart attack and not related to the fact that they had a very seemingly mild symptoms from coronavirus. Do you have a confirmed fatality from coronavirus at this point, even with 300 some odd confirmed cases?
Up to now, fortunately, touch wood, we did not even have even one fatality case due to coronavirus disease. Even the one patient that was in a very bad situation, he was intubated, he was in a very critical situation in Korea. He actually was giving for the first time the same treatment that was given for the first patient in the United States. And he's actually doing well now. He came off of his respirator, he's breathing by himself, and he's actually doing better now. So up to now, fortunately, we did not have even one case fatality from coronavirus in Israel. And I hope we will remain with these numbers.
Are you comfortable speculating as to why your fatality rate has been so low compared to, say, some other countries that are grappling with the epidemic right now?
I do believe that if you look at the numbers in the world, especially the numbers that come from I don't know from China, but if you look at the numbers that come from Europe, from Italy, and from Spain, most of the case fatalities are in the octogenarian age or patients from 70 years old and over with other diseases like COPD, meaning a chronic lung disease, or congestive heart failure, and so on. Fortunately, in Israel, up to now, most of our patients were below 60 years of age, and most of them without any other severe medical problems. And I think this is the reason why we have a very, very, very low fatality rate. But if the disease will spread, especially to the older population, I do believe we will see more fatality rates rising up.
Right. So what are we doing in terms, I say we, I really should say you, Magen David, what is Magen David Adom doing in terms of keeping paramedics who are treating COVID-19 patients safe? What are the precautions that you're taking?
Oh, we did. We've been taking several precautions for our staff as a whole. First of all, a lot of training using the personal protective equipment. We've been doing that for the past at least 15 to 20 years. Every year, every staff member, paramedic or a medic is actually performing in a drill where he has to put on his personal protective equipment. So we've been training them every year. This was the first thing we did. Second thing, we actually told all our workers and volunteers who have beards that they should not go within, not go to the, let's say, missions when there is a possibility of them engaging with coronavirus diseases, because we know there is a problem using the masks of the personal protective equipment for workers, for medical workers who have beards. So we actually moved them a little bit to the backside, doing other jobs. And in the past 2 days, we even went a step further, and we say every worker or a volunteer above 60 years of age, or one that has other medical diseases, especially chronic lung disease or heart diseases, we say we want to use you not with patients. You can be used as dispatcher. You can be used in aiding in other tasks, but not dealing certain with patients, because we know there are greater risks as you become older.
And for the EMTs and paramedics handling the sort of day-to-day calls, in a lot of situations, they may not know, the background of the patient they're dealing with when they arrive. What sort of additional precautions are they able to take?
So first of all, we all our dispatchers, as I said before, we trained all our dispatchers when they take a call, even a call who is not clear-cut.
I think we lost the feed on Dr. Strugo. We lost the feed on Dr. Strugo.
Okay, may I? I'll try and.
No, I think he may be back, Ori. I think he may be back. Yeah, Dr. Strugo, do we have you again? No, I don't think.
No, you can hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Yes. We're good.
You were talking about the paramedics. Okay. Yes, we can hear you.
As I said before, as I said before, we trained all our dispatchers to start the conversation with any kind of patient, with whoever dials 101. They ask certain questions, because if the patient has a medical problem, but if he is on an isolation because of a virus patient, or even if he does not have the clear-cut epidemiological circle, but he has a disease with fever and cough, we actually warn our medics and paramedics to wear their PPEs before going into the patient's home. Even if we don't have the clear-cut diagnosis of a corona patient, at the level of the dispatcher, the suspicion is raised, and they tell beforehand, they tell the paramedics and medics to wear the PPEs before going into the patient's home.
Right. My understanding is that 2 Magen David Adom EMTs did test positive for the disease, but the speculation at the time was that neither infection was related to their work. Is that confirmed at this point?
Up to now, we only had 2 team members from Magen David Adom who actually tested positive for the coronavirus. They're actually from the same family member, a father and a son. And as far as we know, the father was probably the first patient, and his disease was not related to his job in MDA. He was probably infected because another family member came visiting from abroad. And this is probably the way that he was infected. Up to now, because we use our PPEs, because we use very strict regulations, because we train our staff, luckily, up to now, we did not have even 1 staff member of the MDA that was tested positive for the virus. And this is opposing, if you look at what happened in the hospitals in Israel, at some hospitals, and even in some laboratories in Israel, we had medical staff that were tested positive for the virus, probably because they were dealing with the patient without using the precaution needed.
Thank you. I want to finish up. I know you're all busy doing the work you need to do there. So before we close, though, and I'll throw this out to Yoni and Uri, obviously we have our own challenges here with the coronavirus, but how can we here in the United States be most supportive of you there?
Well, first, you have already been extremely helpful with the ambulances, with the equipment that we use, and as Dr. Strugo said, practicing and training our teams we were ready to face this crisis, even though nobody really thought that it will be so dramatic. And this is a great help, and we are extremely grateful. As explained by Dr. Strugo, we're now working on the second phase of implementing the community model, and we need to purchase the equipment, which is sophisticated equipment that can give us the ability to have a long distance transfer of the patient vital signs to the doctors who is attending in the call centers. This doctor will be able to hear how the patient is breathing, the quality and of the patient, the same as if he was testing this patient at his clinic, or listening to his heart, getting blood tests, and a variety of other issues, all using modern technologies, including visual technologies. So this doctor will see the patient that our paramedics will be checking. And this is a great need of Magen David Adom. Needless to say, the disposable equipment that we are using, the protective equipment that we are using by our teams all over is becoming a very precious pieces of equipment, and becoming a big challenge all over the world, and we will need to re-equip ourselves. We are already doing it, but we will need the financial assistance to keep on doing that. And of course, ambulances and medical supplies and medical equipment, because we continue to provide the routine services to all the others of Israelis that need medical attention, and they fortunately do not have issues, or they don't suffer from the corona.
Thank you.
And one last thing is we still have to finish the new blood services center, which is continued to be built while the state of Israel is dealing with this emergency situation.
Right. Well, just as you have succeeded so far dealing with this crisis by training previously, by the same token, right, building the blood center now is for tomorrow's potential crisis. So we certainly understand the need there. You are also very busy, so I want to really express on behalf of American Friends of Magen David Adom how appreciative we are of you giving your time at this late hour. And looking behind Dr. Strugo, of course, we can see how at 8:40 p.m. Israel time, how busy the National Operations Center at a time when it would not normally be busy. So again, we appreciate your time here. Again, thank you. And perhaps we can do this again in several weeks' time as this pandemic continues to run its course for an update. So thank you again. Thank you to people who are attending. And we look forward to speaking to you all again soon.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Well.
Bye-bye.